let's take a look at the color page. And one of the most common things that we have to do as editors, if not colorists, and that's color matching. Frequently, when you're shooting, even at the same time with two different cameras, if you're not paying really close attention with your settings, you're going to get images that look very different. Here's an example. I'll make it full screen.
Right Blake fluid.
That's pretty obvious, right? So now, the Resolve makes it really sort of simple, not easy necessarily, but simple to fix that. So, and I've already done that, so let's have a look at my fixed sequence.
Exactly the right Blake fluid.
You see how that, it's not flawless, but the color palette is about the same, and the brightness particularly, relative to that. So let's have a look at how to do that. And to do that, we need to head over to the color page. So you can find down here. So the color page, yeah, there's a lot going on here, but let me first go through here. Let me reset what I've done, and then we'll go through the interface. So we have what we are doing to the image here, and there's a bunch of different options. Right now we're just going to focus on the primary color wheels, and that's it. And there's more than enough in here to keep us going for a while. And then over here is the scopes, which I have set at parade, and there's one other setting with the scopes that I want to show you later. So this is the FX30 shot, and this is the phone shot. I know the FX30 is the higher quality shot. So what I'm going to do, there's different philosophies about this, but what I'm going to do is make this look as good as I can, within reason, and then match the phone shot to it. So the scope, there's several different scopes here, actually, and they all have different purposes, but for now we're going to work with the parade. And down here at the bottom, 0, that's absolute black, no color, no light. Up at 1023, the way I have my settings at the moment, that is absolute white. So bright that there's no detail left. So that's the range from the darkest to the lightest that we can have in the video. And you can see in this image, even though this image is brighter overall, this image is actually clipping at the top, and that's the sky up here. That it was a fairly bright overcast day, that kind of day where the sky is glaring even though there's no direct sunlight. So the camera settings, I can't remember if this was manual or automatic, but the camera is like, okay, well, we'll just make sure we can see the person, me, and the person is well exposed, but who cares about the sky? So I'm going to try and bring that back under control a little bit. And there's two ways, there's actually lots of ways we can do that, but I'm going to look at the gain section here. Lift, gamma, gain, and offset. Those four wheels or controls. Lift is the low end, gamma is the middle brightness, gain is the higher parts of the brightness, and offset moves the whole thing up and down. So we can bring the offset down, and you can see that I'm getting more detail in the highlights up there in the clouds, but look what's happening down at the bottom end. Now it looks like it's sort of a dark day, or that I'm under the garage too much and there's not enough light. I'm going to undo that by hitting the little undo button here, and look what happens when we turn down just the gain. If we turn down just the gain, which I'm doing by grabbing this wheel here and dragging it to the left, see, most of what's going down is just the bright. I'm going to go back and forth a little. And now it's tempting to look at the scopes, and for a while there you're going to be looking at the scope just to learn how it works. But what you have to do eventually is look at the image, because it's the image that matters and not the scope. The scope is a reference. So as we pull it down, you can see that solid line at the top there that represents, that's it. We clipped, it's not, there's no more information in the highlight. So I'm going to put that back up at the top, and there is probably, I know this is really rough, but that's probably as good as we're going to get for now without doing surgery. And we're not doing surgery. This is actually a process I do as an editor to see if I can match shots. And I just do it real quick. So let's go to the next one, and you'll see immediately, wow. So that's all really super bright. So I'm going to turn the whole thing down to bring the bottom part of the scope here down to the bottom, about the same place the other one was. And, you know, you can kind of look at these thumbnails here to compare them real quick. That's pretty darn good. We'll go click back and forth between these. That's already a significant difference. But now other differences between the two shots are starting to become more evident. Like the color is slightly different. And we're going to focus a little bit on my skin here too, to demonstrate that. You see how that's kind of like a bright, almost, pinkish flesh tone, and this is much more muted. There's a couple of things we can do here. Now this is a higher quality shot, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the temperature here. You can see what the color temperature does as we swing it around really, really dramatically. Small movements are what you need with this, but I'm going to move it just slightly towards red. And that's, you can see the little scale underneath. It's kind of a bluish to reddish, or cold to warm. That's why they refer to it as temperature. So I moved it a little to the warmer side. You can see that by comparison here, it's not quite the same, but it's closer. I think we also need to brighten this up a little bit. I'm going to use the gamma. You have to be real careful with gamma, but I'm going to bring up the midtones a bit and see how that does in comparison. Now this image also seems a little bit more washed out. It's almost like there's dirt on the lens compared to this one. So I'm going to go to contrast and see if I can't kind of just... Contrast increases the difference between light and dark. You have to be careful with it, but let's just take a little contrast. Okay, now we're darker again a little bit, so we'll lift the gamma up just a little to compensate. And now let's look at between the two. Zoom back out, look at the whole image. Now this almost seems a little bit too red in the flesh tone. So I'm going to take this one a little bit more towards blue. Nope, that wasn't right. So I'm going to undo that by double clicking on the temperature. You know, I have a feeling this is going to take a little bit more surgery. So I'm going to undo the temperature on this one. Go back up here where these nodes are. And I'm going to hit Alt-S to create a new node. So I've got one set of changes here, which is my exposure. So I could actually label that node exposure. And I'll label this one balance. All right, so this one will also do that. Create a new node. We'll label this exposure. And we'll label this one balance. So our exposure looks pretty good. So it's okay. Not flawless, but again, ignoring the scope and just looking at the image, there's not a huge difference other than that my shirt's pretty dark. It's pretty dark overall. So I'm going to go back here and let's go ahead and lift that gamma up a little bit more. So our brightness is about right, but that really highlights the difference in skin tone. So let's have a look at exactly what the differences are in that skin tone. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and make sure that my viewer here is set to qualifier, and in my scopes the display qualifier focus is checked. So now when I put the qualifier on my forehead here, you can see in the scopes where the red, green, and blue values are for that spot. So let's go find a similar spot, and you can see right here, boy, that is much darker. The ratio to green, red, and blue is about the same. Maybe a little bit more red, which we knew already, but boy, that is much brighter. So I'm going to go ahead and, but by bright, I mean bright for skin tone. And you see that the red value here is up near 900, and it really should be between 512 and 640. So I'm going to turn the gamma down, the middle part, not the high part. And that should bring it much more into line. Now you see there's way more red than green and blue still. So we can take the color temperature here and slide that just a little bit to the left. Now we'll have a look at that. Still kind of reddish, but I also don't want to, because this is changing all the colors, not just my skin, I also don't want to take the whole thing too far into the blue. So let's have a look at that. and kind of see where those values are. Almost 800 for the red, 512 for the green, and a little over 512 for the blue. We'll back up to the other one, and now you can see here that this is still darker and there's more green than blue. So we could, if we want, adjust the tint. Tint is kind of the green to magenta scale. So we can slide that slightly towards magenta and see if that alters the green and blue ratio. A little more, again, gentle with these controls, because you can, really quickly make this look weird. And it's not that kind of program. So a little bit further there, go back to the qualifier. There, now there's a little bit more blue than there is green, and the red is in about the right place relative to those. But the whole thing is a little bit low in the skin tone, or in the mid. So I'm going to turn the mids up some. But now you can see that the sky is blowing out again. So we'll bring the gain back down. This is kind of ham-fisted way of doing it. But now, if we go back and forth between these two, they're considerably closer. You see how the shirt here, in this case, there's detail and saturation in the shirt, that here it's just kind of blah. We could also go to our saturation control here, grab that, and bring it up just a little, and see what that does. That isn't a terrible match. This one seems a little bit magenta to me, so I'm going to go ahead and back that off a little. Not too much. There we go. Again, we're going back and forth between the scopes for information and the image for truth. What you really need to do is make sure the image matches. And for the most part, if it looks good to the eye, then whatever you've done is good. There's some technical details to that the water gets really deep very fast. Like if you're dealing with 8-bit footage or 10-bit footage, things can get kind of screwy. But that's the basics of color matching, using the primary tools to just kind of get things closer. There's more to this process if you are finishing something and trying to get shots exact, but I will sometimes do a very quick version of this and then disable them by clicking on the number of the nodes here. Oh, I did that color correction on the wrong node. Happens all the time. Just for the sake of it, I'll go ahead, so see the temperature here is 250. I'll copy that. I'm going to delete it, go into the balance node, and then paste it. Now the reason you would do that is you have your exposure on one node, so you can double check that by itself. That way you can separate the different changes you've made to see how they work with it or without each other. It's pretty handy. And then this button up here turns all of the color changes that you've made off, so you can compare it to the original pretty quickly. Now that's a quick look at color matching, or shot matching, which is a very common thing to do. As I said earlier, I do this kind of frequently as an editor when I'm going through. It's like I'll pick shots that I'm pretty sure can match, and then I'll really quickly go and make sure they can match before I move on, just in case I need to pick different shots or arrange things differently. This is an important kind of thing to know. It's pretty basic, but it'll get you started in the color page. And there's a lot of wonderful stuff in the color page of Davinci Resolve, which we'll get into. Thanks for coming along. See you next time.